Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I am joined by a very special co-host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lance Avery Morgan. It's so great to be here again with you all. It's going to be a lot of fun. Chefanie is a barrel of monkeys, I can tell
Well,
already.
and while we're on that subject, so our guest today is Chefanie Nass, and she is the author and founder of a lifestyle brand called Chefanie, and she has this wonderful new entertaining book coming out, perfect for any time of year, as well as the holiday season as well. It's called Swing By: Entertaining Recipes and the New Art of Gathering, and there's so many wonderful different ways that she showcases how to entertain effectively year round. And we're really excited to talk with her today. So with that, Chefanie, welcome. And we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to join you today.
We're thrilled to have you here. So, I want to start, we always like with our subjects to kind of understand where their passions and their interests come from. So talk about where your passion and interest for entertaining originated and how how that's helped shape you.
I grew up in Westchester, New York, which is a little bit outside of New York City. And my parents threw the most fabulous parties. And it wasn't just about the superficial details, it was about being together and creating these amazing memories that are really what life is about. So my mom is a fantastic cook, and my father is passionate about so many things, from art to politics to sports and current events. And our table growing up was just a celebration of all of those things. And my parents really bridged their interests, and it led to really amazing gatherings at my childhood home.
I love that in your book that you write about that you were literally on the dining table, right? They put the you on there as a small child. I love that. And I also love that and this is something I've never heard any really professional entertainer at your level say, and that is that you're at most peace in the middle of an event, which is wild to me. Tell me about that. I'm so intrigued. You had me from that.
So back to your point, I'm the oldest, and my parents had me when they were very, very young, and they didn't stop their life when they had children. So they literally placed me on their dining table when they had guests. And so I really grew up in the middle of the party. And I totally feel at ease, because I think if you're a successful entertainer, you've prepared perfectly. So you're just really enjoying the fruits of your labor by the time the party rolls around. So it's just time to enjoy and have peace. And you don't have to worry about chopping the vegetables because it's done. You don't have to worry if who showed up or whatever because it's done. So, it's just a moment to enjoy and not be stressed out.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. So, my question for you is having that as because a lot of people as children, they'll do the exact opposite of what they did as children, as adults. And you took a very different path. I mean, you really leaned into that and, started as an event producer and, eventually launching your own lifestyle brand. Talk about your professional path, about how you started and what made you decide I'm going to enter the entertaining business all the way through to launching your brand.
Totally. So I moved to France when I was 16 years old. I lived with a French family in the countryside of Brittany, which is the western part of France. And I came by, I went by myself. So I really missed my parents. I really missed how I ate at home. And I started taking cooking classes with this French woman named Madame Pellicot when I was, in 11th grade, 16 and 17. And from that moment on, I could really verbalize my interest in making this my job. So I knew I loved attending, being with people in a party context, and I loved cooking. And I went to Columbia undergraduate, where I studied art history, but I always put my classes on 2 or 3 days of the week so that I could work around New York City on the other days. So I worked in restaurants and bakeries, and I learned a lot in these fast, hot kitchens of New York. And I graduated school and I knew what I wanted to do. I was very lucky to have this clarity. but I also knew that I didn't know much about business. And so if I wanted to start my own business, I would need to learn more about that. So I moved to Silicon Valley. I was a financial analyst for a tech company, and I learned so much. The company I worked for raised $150 million in my first month and was valued. I was the youngest on the team. I was drinking out of a fire hose, and it really prepared me to start my own business. And then I moved back to New York with the company. I continued working with them, during business hours. And at night, I went to culinary school. So 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., I went to the International Culinary Center. I studied professional culinary arts. And by the time I graduated, I was already doing gigs. Like I was hosting supper club in my little apartment, but I also had catering clients. So, I've worked in restaurants and I loved working in restaurants, but I really had found my little niche in catering. So I catered and catered really up until COVID. I had been making custom linens and custom product for my catering clients. And so I had some on my website, like these little caviar cocktail napkins, which are still a bestseller, and these beautiful ceramic straws and other, a few other items that I had put on my website in 2019 before the pandemic. But in the pandemic, my catering business nosedived and my product business really exploded. So now we have over 1,000 products, plates, napkins, glassware, candles, hand towels, pillowcases, blankets. It's for hosting and for the home. Whimsical, colorful, but also, elegant and refined. So that's the evolution of my business. And Rizzoli offered me a book deal, and we've been working on this book since 2022.
Wow.
Fantastic. We know you bring up so many interesting points. I was going to say, I don't know a lot of chefs who have become entertainers at a high level. I don't know many high level entertainers who have a chef background, and most of them certainly don't have a Silicon Valley background. So it sounds like you are all about the big mix when putting together your events and taking all of your knowledge and resources and putting it into that. And one thing that I noticed that really stood out to me in your book was I think you have coined this phrase, it's matchimalism, if you will, which is sort of a play on maximalism of the matching of pieces, at your dinner parties and at your events that are from your product line. Tell me about completing the whole picture for yourself and your clients, because I think that's something that your listeners would like to hear about, Rob, is what about the holistic approach that you bring to this?
Totally. Well, first, I want to give credit where credit is due. There's a fabulous event planner in the UK named Fiona Leahy, and I believe she's the one who first coined
Okay,
matching.
gotcha. Yes.
I'm
going to give it to you, but okay, sure.
I credit her in the book, and we've worked together on some very, very beautiful parties over the years. But I really look at a dinner party as the combination of so many art forms, in the same way opera combines costume design and music and choreography. And, you put all of these art forms together and you have this explosion of the, greater art form. And I think that's true of a dinner party. You have calligraphy and floral design and culinary arts and music. And so I really came at this from the culinary angle. And I think that's like the most central angle to me of a dinner party. But I'm extremely passionate about table design and paper goods and how everything comes together, because it's not only about how the food tastes, it's about the whole environment.
Right. And you have so many environments that you've created. You've created these wonderful little worlds, from poolside entertaining to, I love your blue and white themed event. I mean, there's just tons. It's like a feast for the eyes. How do you keep coming up with these great ideas? Are you inspired by entertainers of the past, or are you always kind of on the lookout probably for the next new thing and resource for you to dial into your events?
I'm always looking for inspiration, but you talk about that blue and white dinner in the book, and that was literally inspired by the wallpaper in that dining room. So I went into the space, I saw the space, and that inspired everything that came after it, from the cakes to the cocktails, to the table setting, to the flowers. So I just am really open to where inspiration comes from. And, sometimes I have an idea, I really want to do a martini party. I come up with the idea first, but I often let the setting inspire what it will hold.
So speaking of all those terms, you had touched upon COVID and how it changed your business, your business and kind of the mix of your business. How has COVID changed entertaining? Like, what is going on now versus 5 years ago that you've seen trend wise?
Well, trend wise, I think in COVID, a lot of people who hadn't cooked before started cooking. And we saw that with banana bread and, just a real surge in sharing of recipes because people couldn't dine out as easily as they were before. And I think people were, collected a lot of ingredients and the bananas went bad. And so they put them in banana bread. And so I think people really learned how to cook and that it was a total joy. And then the next step of that is applying it to a broader context and, a party. So you're not just cooking for your family, you're inviting your friends and your neighbors and whoever else. So I think that COVID really empowered people to create food and then serve it in a way they were proud of.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I
agree.
never thought about it in that lens before. And I guess, one thing that I've always, wondered about with people who are kind of new to the entertaining world is what are some pieces of advice you would give them? Like if they wanted to host their first event or their first dinner party, what's a piece of advice that you would give them?
I think the most important thing is to prepare and plan. So I think a disastrous host is someone who is, opening up their groceries as guests are walking in. Like you're not going to eat, no one's going to eat. No, I don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's really being prepared. You've thought a week before, a month before about how you're going to invite people, a week before about ingredients, a couple days before about chopping all the vegetables, a couple days before about prepping whatever you can in advance. If you're serving ice cream and pie for dessert, the ice cream is already in the freezer, the pie is ready to get baked or is par baked, which is like half baked, and then you're just going to heat it up. But as much as possible is done in advance of the event. And that can be everything. If you're really careful about what you serve, and your flower arrangements can be done the day before, your table can be set a week before, 2 weeks before. A table isn't going to expire. It's not a perishable item. So getting ready in advance and being organized, I think, is what allows you when the party comes around to bring all your good, fun energy, and make the party really pop.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that. One thing that I saw in your book that I was very inspired by is that you're sort of an amateur calligrapher. I mean, you really have such beautiful handwriting. I love how you create your menu cards, your place cards. I'm sure your invitations as well. And that's to me is part of your holistic approach. And one thing I really loved, which is a real quick tip for listeners, and that is you took lemons and calligraphy names as place cards on them to put them in front of place. And I thought that was so charming, so easy. Truly, that's one of those things that anyone could do, but so few people would think about that. Any tips like that you recommend that you've learned along the way that that our folks can become better entertainers at just by your insight?
Totally. Okay, so first of all, for everyone listening, I'm not a calligrapher,
You
and
sure seem like one in your book, though. It's
my
beautiful.
handwriting is what I would call joli lead, which in French is pretty and ugly in one word. My handwriting is so ugly that it's kind of cool. And I think that should empower people to celebrate their own individuality. How you write someone's name is beautiful in its own way. So while it's not classical French calligraphy that I'm writing everyone's name in, it's fun and it's young and it's fresh in its own way. So we can call it calligraphy, but I wouldn't give myself that much credit. So people love seeing their own name. People love hearing their own name. It's affirmative of everyone. And that's how I want people to feel in my home or at my party. And I think when someone sees his or her name in a special new way on a lemon or with seashells, as you might have seen in the Paella
Yes.
Empire chapter, um, it's really exciting. And also it's really inexpensive. So the lemons you could really, if you wanted to, you could juice them after. So it's not even wasteful, or you could plant them. If you find broken seashells or um, washed up wood on the beach, you could use that to craft someone's name in a beautiful way. But, for a dinner I did a couple months ago that wasn't in the book, I got little bread rolls, and then I cut with a serrated knife a little slit, and then I put everyone's name on a place card in the roll. So everyone was going to have bread, but the bread became the place card holder. So I think there's just endless ideas to celebrate someone's name on the table, and I definitely believe in assigning seats. So
Amen.
um,
Absolutely. Big resounding yes from this side.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well,
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're bringing those personal elements up, and a lot of those things that you mentioned could be packed around a theme. Like, you could do an Italian theme, for example, with the lemons. So talk about why and how a great theme is so critical to creating such a successful, entertaining event, whether it's a dinner party or any of the other types of entertaining people could do.
totally. I really endeavor to take people outside of their day-to-day humdrum stress. And I think a theme does that really successfully. So, there's a big difference between microwaving a potato and putting it on a paper plate versus buying a purple potato at the farmer's market and mandolining it and roasting it with the best rosemary from your garden, etc., serving it on your best china. And I think a theme is a way to create an environment that's unusual. So we all, we're American, we live here, but if we were to celebrate Italy, you're really transporting people to another world through the theme.
But, and speaking of themes, there's different ways that you can execute themes. So I know in your book you really talk about the four types of, there's like the core four, we'll call them, types of dinner parties. Your standing soirees, your seated suppers, outdoor dining, and holiday celebrations. So talk a little bit about how you came up with those four concepts and how they can help make, or maybe a novice entertainer, something overwhelming feel a little bit more manageable.
Totally. So a book is a very special medium where you need organizing principles. So the book opens with my principles, including maximalism, including the North Star, etc. And then it goes into the next core four, which I love how you called that: standing soiree, seated suppers, outdoor dining, and holiday celebrations. So, we all know a cocktail party, but a cocktail party doesn't have to be about cocktails. It can be, it's a standing soiree for me is what you might think of as a cocktail party, but it could celebrate with breakfast pastries where everyone's standing with a cup of coffee and there's no cocktails. So standing soirees are those kind of stand-up parties where people are mingling. Seated suppers are, seated meals. Outdoor dining are outdoor celebrations. And then outdoor dining, yeah. And then holiday celebrations are, 4th of July to Christmas to New Year's Eve to Valentine's, just real traditional parties that, have all the nostalgia of people celebrating them forever.
I think what most people are going to take away from this book too, Chefanie, besides your incredible timeless advice, is that you like things a little bit on the fun side, meaning your disco theme party. I loved your carrot cake, right? That was dusted with gold. I thought that was so fun. I think that that sparkle literally is what helps to make a party super special. Tell us about the disco party. Obviously, it's something that anyone who's listening to this would love. I can pretty much imagine. But what was your inspiration for that?
So I love disco music. I love dancing. And I think that whole vibe is such a party in and of itself. And so in the book, you'll see how I set the table, what tablecloth I chose, the color palette I chose, but it all, how, I celebrated the silver scales on fish. And I felt that was the perfect entree for a disco party because of its colors and also because it's the kind of light thing you eat and then you can still dance. So the disco party, and you'll see a cheese board inspired by disco, and I can't wait for people to really leaf through all the pictures. Um, but I thought it was like such a natural party theme, and I applied it to, and I suggested it for New Year's Eve, but it could really be for a birthday or anniversary or a party just because.
Yeah, I mean, you really elevated the concept of disco for sure.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad that you brought up, New Year's Eve and, with the holidays upon us, talk about in your mind, because I know you really, it's in your DNA to attend and be a part of really fun parties. What goes into a great holiday party or holiday celebration?
There are so many directions to go in ahead of the holidays. And again, it could be a standing soiree for your office, or it could, it's very vague, a holiday party. So again, it could be a standing soiree for your office, or it could be a seated meal for your immediate family. So even within the holiday framework, there are so many different um, formats. I think people around the holidays really love to feel nostalgia. And so, if I'm doing these gingerbread scones, and so that's a classic holiday flavor, but in a slightly different format. So I'm not totally reinventing the wheel, I'm celebrating it, but I'm just putting my own little twist on things.
I'm glad that you brought up, the standing soiree and seated supper. You brought them up in combination a couple of times. Are there instances where, whether it's the holidays or any time of year, that you can kind of incorporate different of your core four, that you can incorporate and fuse maybe two of them together to kind of make a whole night out of it, for example?
Sure, for sure. I think people like to trickle into a party, and so they can be greeted with a standing snack or drink, and then they can sit down. So I think they're natural together, but I also think if you're hosting in a restaurant, at a table and throwing your party in that kind of space, people are fine to sit down immediately. But I think welcoming people and not having the pressure of everyone be there at the exact same minute, in the format of standing, is really a nice way to flow into sitting.
I completely agree with that. And it allows people, maybe if people are more introverted, they may want to get there right on time, whereas, because they just want to kind of ease into the event in a situation. I kind of like that whole, a starting point is a starting point. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to be on time. And I think any good host knows no, everyone is not going to show up at the exact same time in the exact same second. You
Right.
know, elaborate a little bit more on that and kind of how you've experienced that at, entertaining it yourself over the years.
So I think that it's fine until it's not. Uh,
Elaborate on that, please. I know exactly where you're going, but elaborate on that, please.
Guests need to ask the questions to know what they're walking into. So if I'm having two couples over for dinner and one couple is 45 minutes late, that is a problem. But if I'm having 100 people over the course of 2 hours for cocktails, I don't really care if people are late. So I think as a guest, you have to get a little information. You can ask the question about what you're walking into because it can be really, really disruptive and it can even ruin the whole party.
That's right. Let me ask you this. Speaking of seated gatherings, do you feel like couples should be seated together or seated separately?
I love my husband and I can never get enough. So I love sitting
Oh,
with him.
okay.
Um, but actually something that I do when we have parties is sometimes I put all the girls on one side and
Okay.
all the guys on a different side, which I know is like not in any etiquette books, but I just think it's nice. I don't, I'd rather talk with like a bunch of girls than talk to someone else's husband.
Sure.
for 2 or 3 hours at a long dinner. So that's just a personal preference. And I think that when I get back in the car with my husband after dinner, we have a lot to share with each other. I heard this. How was this? But in terms of like mixing up couples, not my personal favorite thing. But I also really love my husband. So I don't know if everyone.
Well, I like
Yeah.
that you had talked about, like splitting them up and it gives you, something to talk about. And that's kind of why I like, as much as I love you, Lance, I
Thank
do
you.
like sometimes that I get to learn and experience different things. And I love how I don't think there's one correct way to entertain. So I love that you have, the girls on one side and the guys on the other in a certain instance. I think that, to me, that's the one post-COVID trend is there doesn't necessarily seem to be as many guardrails as there used to be from an entertaining perspective. And talk a little bit about, during the holidays, what is a good way for a host to steer conversations that may go off the rails a little bit? Because that's probably the one time a year where conversations may or can get heated because it could be family oriented and people are coming in with different viewpoints. What's a piece of advice as a host you would give for
And
that?
we also have, this is a major election year. And people are very, divided and feel strongly about what's going on here. I think as a host, you have the total right to say, let's change the subject. That is totally allowed. And, there's also healthy debate and then it can turn sour. So I think you just have to have your ear out for that, the moment before it turns ugly.
So like an intuition, you can just kind of sense and feel, and especially if it's family, you kind of know who all the players kind of are and kind of what their buttons are. I think that's really, really good advice. And one other piece about the holidays, and this is a question that I actually get from people, and I'm glad I'm asking you this because I can just refer them to this segment now. How can hosts do holiday event decor in a way that is elegant and sophisticated as opposed to tacky and tasteless?
I believe in quality over quantity. So I would rather save up for one beautiful candelabra that we use every year than buy, paper or plastic or something that I'm not proud of. So I would just steer people toward investing more in fewer things, and things that are made by hand with beautiful materials are going to obviously be more sophisticated than I don't want to put anything down because it can be turned into something fabulous, but I just think value craftsmanship and materials in what you purchase
Yeah.
over the opposite.
Agree. And that leads to, I mean, sustainability. And speaking of sustainability, because fundraising is about philanthropy and sort of a look behind the scene of philanthropy and people who give back, you have given back with your profession. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. So I am passionate about making the world a better place. And at a given time, I have so many projects going on to make social impact. So I'm very proud because we created a program with the Department of Homeless Services in New York that allows me to go into shelters and give cooking lessons. And we're feeding everyone in the lessons, but we're also demonstrating techniques. That's how to cut an onion. That's how to season eggs. That's how to put it all together. And then we print out recipes, and the recipes that we use for this program are plant forward, which goes back to sustainability. But it's about, how to take the skin off of garlic. It's more than that. So people are able to enter the culinary labor force, hopefully with the little nuggets of information that we're providing. And of course, we're providing the ingredients and the meals and everything in addition. But I just believe in sharing the joy of food because it's very, very empowering.
Absolutely. And, That is empowering. And my one question about, philanthropy in this, how do you think you're giving back and you're giving back to, the New York community or more communities more broadly? How do you think that impacts positively how you host and entertain and how you approach engaging others at events?
Mm, I just think you really, there's so many directions to go in this, but I think that you really never know what someone's going through. And you want people to feel loved, and you want them to feel safe and fed and happy. And so you just really want to be always like on your back, the backs of your feet, like, let me make sure you have everything you need. And if I'm asking, you can just, it's a little common sense, it's a little intuition, but you just want people to feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's sort of the basis of all good entertainers and hosts is providing that welcome environment, making them feel comfortable. To your earlier point, steering away from a conversation that might be a landmine, certainly in an election year or beyond. And so I was going to ask something about the holidays as well. Do you have anything special lined up for the holidays that are coming up that you haven't done before that you can recommend, or like maybe it's a theme or a color that may be unexpected? We'd love to hear about that.
We have so many amazing holiday gifts. We have these new, very fun blankets.
Right.
And again, they're like they're different from anything I had ever seen before. So we have one with the Statue of Liberty on it, but when the blanket's folded, you can't tell. You just see a very cool fringe. And it's a heavy cotton blanket. We have one with a beautiful tiger. These are $150 blankets that make great gifts. But we also have fun pillowcases and aprons and all kinds of fun gifts at different price points. So the best way to see that is on Instagram or on Chefanie.com. But in addition to helping people set their tables, I'm trying to help people give gifts that are different and going to be appreciated.
Yeah, that's awesome because I think at this time of year we get to a point of, oh gosh, well, I've given them that silver frame, or I've given her that whatever. But I think the perfect holiday gift for sure is going to be your book. For sure, swing by, which is one of my favorite phrases of all time, and the fact that you have that as your book title is just really, really genius.
Wow. I hope people love it and I hope people use it. And I really wrote it in a way that people can, look through it quickly and then return to it for recipes or like my checklist. And I hope that it's a resource for many people and also totally a delight.
Absolutely. And I know we're coming up on time here, but we always like to end with kind of a one thing question. So for you, it's what is one thing that all great party hosts that you've seen over the years have in common?
A joie de vivre, a love for life, a joy of life. I think you just have to be excited about every day and even more excited about bringing people together.
That's the perfect answer. And that's
Yeah.
really what it's all about. And especially during the holiday season, it's about bringing people together from different backgrounds, different courses in life, and really creating special memories that people can take in their hearts the next year and many years beyond that. And, congratulations again on the book, Stefanie. We're so excited for your success and can't wait to see what else you have in store.
Thank you.
And Stefanie's book, Swing By, Entertaining Recipes and the New Art of Gathering, is now available for purchase at select bookstores and online retailers. For more information about the book, please visit rizzoliusa.com. And for Stefanie's brand Chefanie, please visit chefanie.com. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli.
I'm Lance Avery Morgan.
Reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.